Hello, Right Hive Conference. Thank you for joining us today. I'm your host for this panel, Nicholas W. Fuller. I'm a writer, I'm a gamer, and I'm honored to be moderating this panel, How to Make the Most of Live Events as an Author, as part of Right Hive 2023. I'm joined today by five extraordinary writers. So let me allow me to introduce them to you. All right. Justine Manzano is my first guest. Justine Manzano is the geeky author of the geeky YA series, Keys and Guardians, and geeky YA novel, Never Say Never. Known as a professional life ruiner by antagonist, Justine's fiction is tough on the outside and sweet on the inside, like an M&M or a hard candy with a gooey center, delivered with sass and snark. Who doesn't love some snark? A freelance editor, she also serves as an editor in residence at Right Hive. She lives in the Bronx, New York, with her husband, teenage son, and new puppy, Justine. What kind of puppy?
He is half a Doberman and half an Aussie, and he is an Australian Shepherd. He's huge. I got a puppy that I thought was going to be I knew he was going to get big, but I got a puppy that was like this big, and now he is like bigger than me. But and he's only 8 months, so it's only going to get bigger.
In the Bronx, and probably at a all right, cool.
I mean, in a private house that I rent. Not that I own. So,
well, I mean, hey, that's cool. You got some room for that horse dog.
There's room for him and some green spaces around, which is good. But yeah, it's so small for New York City.
All right, Mary Beth McCarthy, aka MB Dalto, aka M Dalto, aka probably other names out there. M. Dalto is a best-selling young adult and new adult author of adventurous romantic fantasy stories. 2000 Years, her debut novel From the Parliament House, was one of Wattpad's 2016 Waddy Award winners for excellence in digital storytelling. She has since released 3 sequel novels and 4 companion novellas, so, she's kind of sleeping on her laurels, I think, as well as numerous other contributions to various published anthologies. She continues to spend her time both as a freelance editor and as a mentor, as well as Right Hive's indie profession in residence, where she hopes to engage, assist, and inspire new writers through their journey. She also co-owns independent publishing house Sword and Silk Books, which is a pretty cool name. I like that. When she's not typing furiously at her computer, which it sounds like she's doing quite a bit, she enjoys reading fantasy novels, playing video games, and drinking coffee. She currently lives in Massachusetts with her husband, their daughter, and their corgi, Nix and Hamster Oreo, which is a great name for any pet. M. Dalto, thank you for joining us today. Before we get into it, you have to excuse me while we indulge in my other geeky pastime. So what's your favorite video game?
Depends on what genre you're talking about. Final Fantasy VII has always been my favorite video game forever. Currently, though, I can't quit Hades. Hades is my go-to, has been since the pandemic, and I just absolutely love it. But don't get me wrong, because I'm waiting for Tears of the Kingdom to come out in a few weeks. So can't stop, won't stop.
Right. Solid pick with Final Fantasy. I haven't heard of Hades. I'm gonna have to check it out.
Oh, you have to. It's on sale right now, actually. No plug. This is totally independent, but it's on sale on Steam right now.
Wendy Simpson, aka W.A. Simpson. You've been writing since the age of 5 and finished your first novel at 14. Your debut novel, which I assume is not the one that you finished when you were 14. Your debut novel is Tinderbox. It's available everywhere and is receiving rave reviews. Its sequel, Tarotmancer, will be available June 13th, which is just a few days after this airs. So, pre-order. Wendy is a member of the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association and the Eastern Shore Writers Association. She lives in Delaware, shares her home with her brother and 2 diva cats. When she's not writing, she's reading, working in her garden, or gaming and streaming on Twitch, which is super cool. Wendy, another gamer, which is fantastic. But tell me, what's either the most recent or the most diva thing that your cats have done recently?
Oh goodness. Okay.
I imagine you have a list.
Yeah, I mean, you got about an hour or two. Of course, my one cat, Cinnamon, he's the male. Mm-hmm. And if you're not paying him attention, or if he wants something, he will nip at you. He will it's not a hard bite, but he'll bite you like, hey, human, pay me attention. Wow. And then one time, oh my goodness, I was sitting here working and I had a bagel with mixed berry cream cheese. And I'm sitting here and all of a sudden I hear this little and I turn and look, and there he is, licking the cream cheese. Like, I'm not just sitting there and watching him.
Right.
I still don't know. Like, I didn't even know cats liked mixed berry cream cheese.
It's got the word cream in it. It's good enough,
I was
right?
about to say cream cheese is a cat thing for sure.
Yeah.
Really?
But oh yeah, he was like, well, it's here, so I'm gonna take it.
Yep.
I am cat.
All right. And Jacob Devlin, thank you for waiting. Ladies first, right? So when Jacob was 4 years old, he would lounge around in Batman pajamas and make semi-autobiographical picture books about an adventurous python named Jake the Snake. That sounds amazing. I need that in my life. Eventually, he traded his favorite blue crayon for a black pen, and he never put it down. When he's not lost in the story, Jacob loves geeking out at a comic book convention and cooking. He does most of this in Southern Arizona. Jacob, thank you for being here. What's your favorite con experience you've had so far?
Thank you so much for having me. And gosh, I'm trying to think. So there was one that I went to just as an attendee, like before I started publishing, and I got to meet some of the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So like Brett Dalton, who played Agent Ward on the show, and Elizabeth Henstridge were there. And then the next year, Ming Na was there. So like getting to meet them was really cool. They're very nice people, very good humans, signed some stuff for me. And it was just a really cool experience.
One thing I love about like genre fiction and whatnot, like rare is there a big a-hole in the group, right? Like, I mean, you never hear too many stories of like, oh, I met this person, they were just a jerk, No. Holly Ash, the author of the Journey Mission series and the Cleansing Rain duology, she prides herself on writing smart, sassy female characters that she wished she could have found in books while growing up. I hear that. She was not the female, but anyway, has worked for the last 15 years as an environmental engineer after receiving degrees in environmental science and English literature from Central Michigan University. So you definitely had different classmates for those two. Holly lives in the Metro Detroit area with her husband and two tiny people who constantly want her to do things for them. Holly, I like to say, and this is true, that my now 2-year-old daughter got me back into reading because when she was tiny, I could read on the Kindle while holding her and she slept. But now I like to joke that she's a pretty crap writing assistant. So I feel your pain with the two little tiny humans that want stuff all the time. But thank you for joining us.
And they will put stuff on my desk. It's amazing what I find on my keyboard and in my desk and in my books. I have a 4-year-old and a 9-year-old. So they keep me on my toes.
Have they eaten your mixed berry cream cheese too?
They have not yet.
No.
But my candy, I have my children convinced that caramel is spicy, so they won't touch it because that's what I need when I'm writing is chocolate and caramel. And they won't try it because I keep telling them it's too spicy for them. They won't like it.
Genius.
Awesome.
Genius. All right. Now that we're properly done with the introduction, this is what it's going to be like tonight, guys. We're going to roll with it. So every author knows what a signing is, right? But I imagine that every author also knows at least one horror story of a signing event kind of gone poorly. I think most often that horror story is that nobody showed up. And I recall even recently there was some author talking about that on Twitter, but then a bunch of famous people were like, no, we've been there too. So it happens to everyone. But today I'm talking to these fine folks to try to talk about how we can maybe avoid the horror stories and instead enjoy our live writing events. And they can be really fun. And we'll talk about some creative ideas for live events. So, I think this perception of live events can sometimes be negative among writers. It might be that the writing of a live event might be a stuffy thing at a library, that sort of thing. But it doesn't have to be that way. I heard a story of a writer that actually bought like 20 seconds on a New York Times like digital billboard, and they sort of made it into an event, which apparently is not that expensive when you're only doing 20 seconds in the middle of the night. But if you make it an event and tell your readers ahead of time, like, hey, I'm going to be there and I'm going to like have this in the background, so come with me and let's do like a big group shot. I was like, that actually sounds like a pretty fun little live event. So now this one, I want to go around with each of you, and I want to hear from you, like your favorite author live event that you've done, and or the most creative and unusual live event you've ever heard of. Let's start with you, Justine.
For me, I'm not sure about the most creative live event I've ever heard of. I don't really have any examples that are coming to mind, but I did a very fun event called Books in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and I'm coming back again to do it again this year. And it was great because it was just like, rather than having to hold up the whole thing on your own, it was a really big collection of authors. They rent out an entire place, and they have rooms for each genre, and they go through they walk the people through. And it was very nice. The people that were running it were really great. They had a bunch of assistants on hand to help you out if you needed. I also just had an awesome experience because I got to bring my best friend with me as my assistant, and that was just a lot of fun. And it was just, I feel like personally, for newer writers, that felt like a better experience for me, just because, I'm not as established out there. It's hard to when you're indie. But other people were bringing in the people. Everyone made a concerted effort to get people there. And so when you had all of the authors bringing in their readers to the best, to their best ability, and then everyone else, they were marketing it really well. So just anyone in the neighborhood was just walking into this book event. And by the end, like, you walked away with a decent amount of sales. You met a lot of great people, a lot of great writers. And it was just a really great, way of networking, and also just talking to your readers and getting people interested in your books. And it was a lot of fun.
Sounds nice. Holly Ash, same question. Favorite live event that you've done, and or most creative or unusual event that you've heard of or seen?
So my favorite event that I've done was a smaller con I did last summer in Lansing, Michigan. I went to Capital City Comic-Con, and the con itself was a normal con. My sales weren't great at that one, but what I really, really loved about this event is there were several authors there that I had been connecting with online, and it was the first time we all got to meet in person and hang out. And this con in particular, and I think not all of the ones I've done do this, but this was great. They had events for the artists every night for us to go to. So they had their big, I don't even remember his name, but they had a small time comedian come in. He was one of the big celebrities. He put on a private comedy show for us at a drink and draw event one night, and they had a dance for all the authors and artists, and they did a cigarette night with some of the other stars there. So just having those planned networking events after the con, after we've all worked and we could share, that was a really unique experience from some of the other cons I've done. That was really awesome. It was all included with the table costs. And so it was nice to just not go home and decompress, but to really get to share those stories and commiserate and share tips with other people that have just gone through what you went through. So that was different and really memorable.
That's super cool. That sounds fun. I'm gonna sign up for that. Jacob, same question.
I think for me, and we'll see if I have the same answer in a few months, because this is totally the recency bias right here. But last month I got to do the Arizona Renaissance Festival, and I was writing to Wendy about this recently, but it was so much fun, and I had low expectations for it because I had never done one of these before, and I hadn't even been to a Renaissance festival in years and years. And so to even just go as an attendee was something, very new for me. And to go as an author, I wasn't sure what to expect, because when people go to a Renaissance festival, they're not necessarily there to buy books. They're there to watch jousting and eat turkey legs and all that fun stuff. And so, but there was a shopkeeper, she had her own little bookstore, and she invited me in and had me sit. She set a table out in front of the shop for me. And, she ordered all the books and kind of had them ready to go when I was there. And so to be able to be there and mingle with people who I felt were my people, because one of the books that I write has a lot of dragons and just fairy tale vibes to it. So when people saw it, they were like, I see a dragon, I want it, and so it was really cool to connect with folks and think, we could bond over this. And even, when I had those moments of downtime, just to be a people watcher and, see all the, the bards pass by. There was a bard who came to my table and was like, would you like an obnoxious pitch for your book? And then so he looks out at the crowd. He's like, let's hear it for books, everyone. This nerd wrote a book. And it was just really fun. But it was one of those events where it's hard to be bored because there's just so much going on around you, and you're kind of among your people. So that's been one of my favorites that I've ever done.
That sounds amazing. I totally want my own bard. How does one acquire such a thing? Did you also dress up while you went to this, or?
I did. Yeah, I wore a costume. It was a lot of fun.
Perfect.
Did it relate to any of your characters in your book at all?
Not
costume?
necessarily to my characters, but,
Right.
but no, it was just fun to, go with the vibes.
Yeah. Very nice. Very. This nerd wrote a book. I love it. W.A. Simpson, let's hear your favorite event story.
Well, all the other stories I'm hearing right now are fantastic. I've not yet had the opportunity to do that, but Jacob, I am working on the whole Renaissance Fair thing. So I'll keep you updated on that. Usually I just have readings and signings at like books or libraries. And I think one of my favorite ones, and I know you've all probably done this, is I have one at the indie bookstores are my favorites, because last one I had, it was like this dreary, rainy day, but people were just coming in. And what I like to do is, you're not going to sell anything if you're just sitting and looking, or if you're just waiting for people to come to you. You have to go to them. You can ask my brother. I like practically tackle people when they're coming in. And like, I'll go up and for example, my most recent reading was at the big Barnes and Noble, and people come in, and if it's a place with a door, I'll open the door and I'll say, welcome, would you like to hear about my book? So the one at Barnes and Noble, I was set up in front, and one of the things that you always have to have, I think, is swag, lots of swag. And that usually draws people over, especially the big bowls of candy. So at this point, people would come in, I'd greet them. I ended up selling out that day. And one woman actually came in and she bought 9 copies straight up, because she wanted to give them as like, this is like a little before Christmas, and she wanted to give them as gifts. And the rest of them just sold out. And that's what I'll usually do. It's like, you got to go after the reader. You can't wait for them to come to you.
That is awesome. I love the opening the door and be like, hi, would you like to read my book? That's definitely like a little jarring in a great way. And I love the note about swag. I assume that Jacob's swag at the Ren Fair was turkey legs. Dalto, go ahead. Let's hear.
So I was fortunate enough, with me and about 6 other authors from my publishing house at the time, we got ourselves a booth at the last BookCon in New York, and it was phenomenal. And I understand the pandemic happened, and life happened, and they're not doing it anymore, and it breaks my heart, because it was such an amazing experience. We all had our own books. We all were helping each other out. We all were able to meet people, to greet people, to sign books for people. And BookCon itself is such a huge event that, being there, it was cool. It was just a great experience that I don't know if I'll ever be able to find something that will top it, because that was like a high point. Like, we never thought we'd ever go to BookCon. We never thought we'd ever get a table at BookCon. And no, we all practically sold out of the books we had that weekend. So it was just all of us there together. Obviously no one's competition. We're all helping each other sell, helping each other promote. And it was just an awesome experience. So I think that is like top tier for me. And I don't know if I'll be able to compare to it again.
I don't know. Have you been to a Ren Fair?
Oh, I go to Ren Fairs all the time. I don't know if I'd be able to get my books there, because at least the one in Massachusetts is really, they're sticklers about outside vendors coming in without like contracts for like the whole time. If I was still down in Maryland, though, I'd be there in a minute.
Justine, you were starting to say something, please.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that it's so important when it comes to these sorts of things, like especially if you're working with other authors, to be that support together. And if you do work with other authors on these things, like, there are so many books to read. Don't get territorial about it. Don't get upset if other people are selling better than you there. Like, you're there, you're cheering for each other, and you're making valuable context, even just with the writers that are there with you. I think that's like super important to remember, because I think it can be hard sometimes. And, not every like Wendy and Dalto, like they have the dream stories here where they're like, they sold out and they got, like, not everybody can do that, but you know what? It's so worth it, even if it's 5-10 people that you meet that day and that's it. And you still, you're creating connections. And the idea also, if we're talking about tips on what to do, is to make sure those connections last. Newsletter signups, give out, like Wendy was saying, the swag should all have your website. The swag should all have your social media. Make sure that you're getting out there. Like, even if they don't walk away with the book and they take your bookmarks, then they're walking out with your bookmarks. They'll look back at it. They'll be like, oh, let me put this on my to be read. Anything you get to stick in people's minds. I got lucky. I mean, everybody here has gorgeous covers, and so this works, but my publisher does really good work with my covers, and I've made a lot of swag with them and had people just going, this is pretty, and taking things. Good. Take it because it's pretty. Look at it though. Maybe take it because it's pretty. We'll go and look back and go, yeah, okay, this actually looks like a cool book. Because people do judge their book by their cover. So hopefully that works. But it's so important to, like, even if you're not making the sales there, to make the most out of the experience that you have and connect with all the people that walk in some meaningful way. Just because you don't know what comes later and people will remember you.
And I want to kind of build off of what you said about working with other authors there. Even if you're at a table alone and you know other authors there, there's some cons I've done for years now, and I know most of the regulars that are there. And it's to the point now that we know each other's work well enough that if we can tell a reader might not be into our genre, our book might not be for them, I can direct them where to go to find what they're looking for, because I know who else is there. I know what everybody writes. I know their genres, and they do it for me too. To the point that sometimes we're texting each other saying, I'm sending to your way. Here comes this couple. They're looking for this. I thought of your book. So just to reinforce what Justine said, the other authors there are not your competition. They're your team. That's your coworkers, and everybody's going to sell and help each other out, because not every book's for everybody. And, people come to buy more than one book. So get to know them and help them. If it's clear your book's not for them, send them where they're going to go. Oh, you want a kid book? My friend Jordan's over there. He's got children's books. Fantasy, go over here. So those connections are maybe worth more than the sales in the long run, I think.
Yeah. And like Wendy said, like, talking to people, so important. Just not sitting there behind your table. I got really lucky at the last event I was at, and I was like literally right near the ladies' room. So everyone came by my table at some point. But like, that's not always going to happen to you, but getting out there, talking to people, going and standing by your table to get the attention over. Hey, do you want to check out my book? Or, hey, do you want this bookmark? Do you do you want to take this? Like, whatever, just getting out there, getting out from behind your table, making yourself obvious in the space so that you stand out in some way is so important.
I can't get over Jacob's bard. That would get you to stand up.
That is what I'm talking about.
I'd love to do something like that.
Yeah, everyone needs a bard. Every live event, have a bard with you.
Yeah.
I've totally used my kids to hand out bookmarks.
Mhm.
No one's gonna not take a bookmark from a 4-year-old little girl in a princess costume.
Let me tell you.
Perfect.
Oh, that's so cute.
Oh.
You just made me think of something. When you were sitting, okay, so anywhere you go, you're marketing your book and everything's a live event. I know that sounds crazy, but I read for kids. There's a local bookstore in the area, and I've been doing this for years. I go and I read picture books like once every few months. Well, when my first book was coming out, and I did not think, because they mostly publish kids books, but they also go all the way up to YA. My brain didn't do, I was still new at this. My brain didn't do the connection that maybe they'd want to host my book signing. Now, turns out this doesn't have a happy ending because the pandemic came in the middle of my book release. So that didn't end up working out. But when I'm sitting there reading random kids picture book to like kindergartners. And at the end of it, my son just randomly pops out and goes, my mom is going to publish a book in a few months. You guys should come back here for that. And I laughed it off at first because I'm like, why did you do that? But he was smarter than me because the owner of the indie bookstore walked over to me and said, really? And I was like, oh yeah. Like, she was like, okay, we're going to do a signing here. And I was like, I didn't think to ask, but there it was. And that's why I was saying, like, everything's alive, that everything you should in some way represent yourself. I'm a writer, I'm an author. My book is coming out, like, when you're meeting people, because I never would have thought to do that. And here's my, like, I think at the time he was like 9 or something. And he just walks up and is like, by the way, buy my mom's book. And it worked. I mean, and we had a partnership, even though we couldn't do a live event because of COVID. We did end up doing like an online event together for the release. And so it did work out. And it was just such a like kind of wild experience because I wasn't going to do that.
Yeah. My 9-year-old son is way more extroverted in regular life than I am. So definitely gets me into situations. So I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
But
My brother is my bard. He's my older brother, and he'll, no matter where he goes, he's fishing. He likes to fish, and he'll take handfuls of my business cards and pass them out to his fishing buddies. And it's like, buy my sister's book. Like, he can be very convincing. Yeah, he's 5'9" and used to play football. So
you're tackling folks at the bookstop, and he's sending out business cards to fishing home. Very good.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Oh, I hand them out everywhere. I'll if I go to like a doctor's office, I'll put bookmarks, and I'll ask. I won't just do it, but usually they're pretty good. If you just ask, hey, can I leave some bookmarks or some business cards? And it's always been yes for me.
Nice.
So try that if you haven't.
There you go.
Same kid going to high school, turning 14 in over the summer. Mm-hmm. And he's already telling me, he's like, well, now I'm in the right age group for your books.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not like he hasn't already read them, because he did. But he's like, now I can go and tell people at school that they have to read it. And I'm just like, please don't like base friendships on don't walk into school the first day like my mother writes.
He's gonna come to school with a backpack full of your books and be like, y'all like
you want a book?
That's an idea.
Hey. I mean, it's not a terrible idea. It's also a step in the door to go and do a book talk or something at the school. But yeah, I think it's hilarious when other people, and it's so welcome too. Like, I don't know about you guys, but like I personally feel like I'm like one of those people who likes to do everything by myself, even though I know that I can rely on other people. I'm like, I'm gonna handle this. If someone's willing to go out of their way for you, like, let them. We need help. We need community. It's easy to be by yourself in this and totally insulated, because we're writing, our books are in our own brains, and when we're doing the writing part, it's all internal. But when we're doing the marketing part and all that other stuff, that's all external. Like, let the world in, let people help you, let people give you boosts, it all pays off.
Love it. Okay, MB, I've got a question for you, and then a similar one for you, Jacob, right after. MB, how do you determine the value of an event? Like, do you consider kind of the space fees? Are you looking at reader turnout? Are you looking just at the popularity of the event? What makes like an event something you want to do?
Yeah, I think it's like research into it, and if it actually means something to me as well. Like, I would not just put myself, I'm a fantasy writer, so I don't think I'd ever put myself into a strictly sci-fi event, just because I know sci-fi, but I don't know sci-fi. So I feel like I don't want to be that kind of person. But I think like I would do some research and make sure that it's something that I could be comfortable in, that I wouldn't be like, oh, here's just an author trying to get her books in front of everyone, which you should do. But you also want to make sure that you're getting it in front of the right people too. So one of the events I did that was really like near and dear to me, that I was able to finally do once the pandemic was not over, but they were able to do live events again, was up here in Massachusetts. It's Ladies Con. So it was all with women and women identifying, femme identifying authors, non-binary, LGBTQ, events and vendors and everything like that. And it was phenomenal. It was just something where it was like a sense of community that I knew that I could go, I could bring my books, I could meet people. There was networking there. I exchanged so many business cards. There were local indie bookstore owners that were there saying, hey, can we have your book? And so it was such a cool event that I don't know if I'd be able to get somewhere else that was either bigger or, again, out of my genre, out of my comfort zone. So at least for me, believe it or not, I am actually very introverted when it comes to meeting people face to face. So that helped me get out of that zone, be able to get, hey, read my book, feelings and become my own bard in a way.
So it sounds like, I mean, you weren't kind of like, breaking it down in like a cost benefit analysis. It's more like, is this going to be a place that I'm really going to like enjoy being and feel comfortable here to like kind of sell my book and get along with the folks there, right?
Right. Yeah. Because if I'm comfortable, I'm going to be more comfortable talking about myself. So I think one of the worst things that as an author, I'm going to have to be like, what's your book about? Because I never have a good answer. But at least if I'm somewhere where I myself can like lower the anxiety and raise the excitement in a way, it makes me feel like my time is worth it. So, obviously I'm not going to pay exorbitant amounts by myself for a table, halfway across the country with airfare and anything like that, if I can do something a lot more comfortably locally. But that's not to say, like I went to New York and did BookCon with a bunch of people I knew, which was also taking us all out of our comfort zones, but we were also comfortable together. So again, it's that support system I think that all authors should have or try to find to have, that will make live events and just, being an author in the community, a much more comfortable and viable experience.
I would say, I think too, if you're thinking, man, where do I find this community, you're looking at it, right? Go check out Right Hive more deeply, and I bet you'll find other people that want to do this with you. So Jacob, I've got kind of the same question but a little bit different framing on it. So what are your goals when you're at a live author event, or like really any event as an author? What kind of goals do you have there? Are you like, well, I want to sell X books? Is that number one? Or is it, I'm trying to make connections with other authors? Or how do you kind of look at your goals while you're there?
I think for me, it's really just, I want to leave feeling like I've connected with new readers and, kind of left an impact on them. And, because like when I write, like it's escape for me, like that's what stories are for me. It's an opportunity to kind of get out of my head and, like see myself in another world and such. And so I, kind of go into these events thinking, I would like for somebody out there to find my story and feel like they can escape into that too. And like they have that same opportunity. So whether that's, selling out, that's great when that happens, but, it's not going to happen every time. And so if I, meet one new reader, they pick up a business card and they think, like I connected to that guy, even if they don't buy the book, if they connected to me and they found me on social media and they, we had a good conversation as humans, then I walk away feeling like this was an awesome event. It's one of my favorite parts, just getting to meet new people and feel like, we bonded over something. We have this love of stories, and, even if it means something different to each of us, then it's a win. It's the human experience, getting to know new people and, finding the ways that we can connect over these things.
Yeah, I think that's something that we kind of hit on discussion a little bit before, is the connection, especially with readers. Holly Ash, is that kind of what you're looking for as your number one in the live events also?
Absolutely. We're all there because we want to make money. So my goal for sales is always, I want to make back my table fee. I want to break even. And any profits, that's bonus. But I really want to connect with readers and get to share that excitement of story with them. It's happened a couple of times now. My absolute favorite thing when I'm at these events is getting to be some kids or some teens or somebody's very first signed book. And that is always the most awesome experience. It's usually a teenager and there's usually that parent there that is hyping it up. and they're like giddy and nervous, and to get to have that experience with them. Or you meet the kids that are trying to write for the first time, or somebody that's trying to write their first book, and you get to encourage them and help them. And those type of moments are the ones that matter the most to me. One that made me cry, I was doing a like after church craft fair, and I met this older woman, and we talked for quite a bit about feminism and science fiction, and just being able to write these female leads and write these characters. And she didn't end up buying anything. She walked away. She found the event host and told her that that was one of the most meaningful conversations she's ever had, and she would have bought my books, except she's on chemo, and like this was her last outing ever. And to get to have that moment, and the organizer pulled me aside later and told me, and I just like broke down. I'm like, that's why you go, is to meet those people. And you know, she had been a sci-fi reader forever, but she never saw herself in these books, and we got to talk about that and got to share that. And one of the, this was her, like one of her last times she was going to feel healthy enough to go out, she said. And it was a really incredible, moving experience. More important than any sellout days or big sale days I've had.
Wow. That's amazing. That's incredible.
That really is, I mean, my heart. But yeah, like that's why we do it, right? Like we want to meet.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to like consider the fact that we're all with our people when we're doing this. I know, like you were saying, like your people, Jacob, you're like you've got your people with you. And that's the thing. Like you're not going to, like, no one's coming to a book show or going to a convention and aren't going to be interested in the things that make your book, right? Like if you pick them correctly, I mean, there are some, like if you're sitting there like writing women's fiction, you're sitting in a sci-fi show, you might not, like if you pick incorrect, like an incorrect match, yeah, okay, you might not be amongst your people. But if you're going to a place like when me and MB actually did an event, and it was we did why was my brain, what is it called again? Why is my brain not working, MB?
What was it? It was Aricia here in Boston.
It's in Boston. I got to hang out with MB in person, and we did, we were on panels and stuff, and going there we were definitely among our people. Everyone, there were people in Critical Role clothes and like great cosplay, and we're big geeks, and it was just like totally like our kind of place. When we were talking and talking about our books, people were nodding along. They got it. No one's walking in there to not get what you're talking about. Everyone wants to get lost in a story. That's why they're sitting there looking at books. So at least on some level, you're going to be able to connect. Even if it's just love for story and not love for your story.
Yeah. Well said. So thinking about kind of, and Holly, your story of these people, like the first time writers, thinking about, the first time you're going to this writing event, I'll kick this question to Jacob. What were some of the things that you did either early on or you kind of are doing now to kind of make sure that you're in the right mental space for coming to these events and thinking like, not being stressed out, and, what advice could you give to someone who's going to one of their first events?
Gosh, I would say, just have fun as a human first and foremost. Go into this ready to, just have a good time, I think is really important. And for me, I think what I look forward to is the events that have the costumes. So, I mean, I mentioned wearing the costume to the Renaissance Festival, but I also do the Comic-Cons, and I'll wear a costume every single time, because for me, that's just, I get to put on kind of a different face, but it's still very much on brand for me. Like if you follow me on social media, I'm a huge geek, Marvel, all these things. And so going to these cons and, just getting to be like myself in a way that, I don't get to do every single day, that's something that's really big for me. And so I just get excited about this, like I can, put on this, bring out this aspect of myself that people don't necessarily get to see every single day. And so I think it kind of starts there. And bringing the swag items, I think, really helps too, because if they're not gonna, get the books, they might get excited about, like the bookmarks, or, like getting to, pet the little stuffed dragon that I bring with me, or things like that. I think it's, I think in the end, just being ready to, like have a good time. Don't put a whole lot of pressure on yourself, and just, be ready to make some memories, I think is really important.
I love that. Wendy, you want to chime in? Any kind of similar thoughts on how to kind of have the right mindset for this, especially if you're kind of new to events?
Well, usually when I go to events, I'm already pretty excited. There's always like that rush of adrenaline that you feel when you actually go, and you're there and you try to sell your books. But if you need to get yourself into a mindset, I would say just think of the call. That first time you got that call from the agent or from the editor or whoever, or if you're self-published, the first time you actually saw your book. I remember that was monumental for me when Tinderbox got here. And just remember, okay, I've accomplished this. This is my dream. I did this not only for my readers, but I also did it for myself. That's what I always say. Write for yourself first, then write for others. If you get in that mindset that just say, this is what I've accomplished, that should work. That's how it did for me.
Okay, each one of you just like these mic drop moments. This is what I accomplished. Like, yeah, I like it. Yeah, right. Anyone else want to chime in on that one? Or
so I have a different approach, and I'm gonna as you mentioned in my bio, I have the English side, I have the science side too. So to me, I like to be prepared. If I'm prepared, then I can get out of my own head. So what that means for me, depending on the event, it's practicing my table setup. I'll set my table up in my living room. I will arrange my bookshelves, my stands, what's going to be the most eye-catching. I'm very, very intentional about everything that goes on my table. I pick out my outfit. I'm very intentional about my outfit and what I'm going to wear. If I'm going to a Comic-Con, it's going to be a graphic tee that might pull in the right type of readers for my books. If I do a lot of craft shows and church shows, especially during the holidays to get those like Christmas sales, I'm going to dress up a little bit nicer to attract that crowd. I use my mug here with my college alma mater that you can't see to pull in that. Hey, we went to the same school. I have eye-catching book stands that are different styles. So I do all that for my show. So everything is very intentional. And when I get there, I know where everything's going to go. So I can set up and start getting in that mindset. For readings, I will practice. I will time myself. I will do it in a mirror. I will record it so that I know when it's time to be on. Because I'm also super introverted and it takes a lot of prep work to get me in that mindset. I've rehearsed potential answers for this in the shower for the last week and a half on what could the questions be and what am I going to say, so that it feels more natural when the time comes and I can get out of my own way.
Also, prepare your book pitch.
Yes.
I've tried to go in without one, and it's a story about a girl who
well, I put a lot of words on a page.
and like sat there floundering, and then thankfully I had an assistant there with me, someone helping me out who just started jumping out and saying things, and I was like, yeah, and went with no, like have your book pitch down. Be ready to talk about it. I am also super introverted, and it's funny because like talking to like everyone talking today, like we don't seem super introverted, but it is popular in writing because we do a lot of work in on our own, and yeah, it's all exactly in your head. And so like these things don't come naturally to us, but I do have a bit of an acting background, and that helps so much, because like at first I didn't get the connection there, because I would be when I'm on stage, I you can't see anybody on a stage, right? Like you're on the stage, you got lights on you, everything else is dark. You don't really see people. So you have to kind of trick yourself and be like, no one's there, and perform. But when you're in front of them and they can see you, there's a little bit of a transition you have to make mentally to go, okay, I'm me and I'm not playing a role. And now I'm in front of all these people and I can see them. But on the plus side, like, I am used to speaking in front of crowds. I am used to, talking in another person's voice, but so you create that person for yourself. You sit down and you go, like Holly was saying, you put on, or like Jacob was saying too, because he was saying like putting on the costume puts him in the mindset, rehearsing it puts you in the mindset. You're playing the role of the author today.
Mhm.
Right.
And you calm yourself and go in with what you know about your book, about readers, what is likable about your book. And you go, naturally, I wouldn't talk about this with people, but today I am Justine the author, and I'm going to go in there and I'm going to talk about my book, and that's going to be comfortable for Justine the author. It's not comfortable for Justine the writer at all. But like the selling author, I'm going to go out there and do it. It's not an easy thing for us though. Like I feel like that's an important thing. Like we don't go into these things, at least most of us don't go into it super comfortable with the idea. Especially because we all know our books way better than anyone else is going to understand them. And so we get tied up in the weeds, I think, in explaining what our book's about, when a lot of times you can sell people on best friends to lovers.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. And that's it. And you're like,
oh, I love that trope. Right.
yeah. Exactly. And
Right.
and when you can do that, like, why do you need to, like, you're giving so much of the explanation when really you can just be like, oh, it's an action adventure fantasy with friends to lovers romance.
Nice.
I just basically pitched.
Yeah.
I mean, I can do more if they want to hear more, but that's the way to see.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I was gonna say. Like, narrow it down to your tropes. Everyone knows the tropes, friends to lovers, enemies to lovers, only one bed, forced proximity, try to figure out what that is. And then you ask people, what do you like to read? And then you're like, oh, well, I have this, or I have this, or I know about this. The other thing that I think about is like, I'm so good telling people about my favorite books. Like, oh, I read this one. You should read it because your book should be your favorite book in the grand scheme of things. You should know your book as well as, that book you just finished that you couldn't put down and want to reread again. So try to think about it in that way too. Like if you were trying to sell this book to your friend to get them to read it so that you could have a conversation about it, what would you tell them? And so every time you have a potential reader coming to you, every time you have someone walking by, look at them like that friend, like, hey, hello, new friend. Here's this book that you should really read. And then just with that mindset too, it will help you loosen up, try to have a conversation. Yes, it's a pitch. Yes, you're trying to sell. I'm not a salesperson at all. I have marketing is so low in my priorities, but as an author, you got to do it regardless of whether you're agented yourself or anything along those lines. So being able to have a conversation about your book face to face with a complete stranger is going to get you so far in any event. And so pretend they're your friend, practice in front of a mirror, practice with your family, your friends, people you're comfortable with, so that then when you can get to these events, you can ramble those pitches, ramble those tropes, ramble those examples off to anybody that you need to, who's going to come to you and want to know, hey, what's this book about?
And what do you like to read? Great opening for a conversation, even if it's not your books. If you read something about like it, or if you like Holly, where she was like, I just send them to the people who they like, you can, at least you've opened up the conversation. Now you have an icebreaker. You guys can talk about a book for a little while, and then you can, even if they don't end up walking away with your book, and you send them on your way, but you're making a connection.
Great points. I love the idea too of your book should be your favorite book, or at least you should be able to talk about it like it's your favorite book, right? So I wanted to ask about like a live event checklist, things that you should kind of go through beforehand. It sounds like make sure your book is your favorite book, have some acting lessons, get yourself a costume and a bard, right?
In a bard.
Yeah.
Don't forget the bard.
Obviously, I'm joking, but seriously, like what kind of checklist? What are things you want to make sure that you have at a live event? Let me start with Wendy, and then Holly. Ash, it sounded like you have some of that. So
Okay. Well, plenty of copies of my books, first off. That's kind of a given right there. But I was saying before, swag. I always want to make sure that I have things that people are interested in. You don't just want to present anything on the table. So I guess you start with books, you start with interesting swag, you start, then you do with the time frame of, some bookstores or whatever, they'll say you can do 2 or 3 hours. And then some will say you can do 11 o'clock to whenever. That's how Barnes and Noble is having me do it. So I have to make sure that the day is free, that there's nothing else I'm supposed to be doing then. And then of course, I always make sure my brother's with me, that's for sure. Always make sure that you have somebody there to help you out. So if you do forget something, you have that person to help you and bounce ideas off of. And I think it was Nicholas who said it earlier, like make certain that your website, your book, whatever swag you bring, that's on there. That's what I make sure. Make sure I have swag that people will like and that they can still reach me. And then usually I'll make sure that I do get something to eat too. Yeah, that's very important. Take like 15 minutes to get something to eat, a donut or something like that, because that adrenaline will not last forever. Because when I went on my last signing, I was on my feet for like 5 hours, and my brother was like, aren't you hungry? And he's like, do you want to sit down? He was so worried about me. He's so sweet. And I was like, I can't, I'm too antsy. But then after the first few hours, I was like, yeah, I need to sit down and I need to get something to eat. So he ran over to the cafe and he got me something, which is really nice of him. He's really sweet. But yeah, always make sure that you're taking care of yourself and your health too, because you don't want to like overexert yourself when you're at these things.
Great points, good advice for everything, I think. But yeah, I love too that it really sounds like everyone has sort of talked about having someone else with them. I think that makes it so much easier too. Being a writer can be very solitary, but when you're out there doing this thing that maybe is a little unnatural, have someone there that's going to kind of hype you up and be supportive. But Holly, is that part of your checklist to have someone there?
Yes, but I don't always get to have someone there. I've done some really big cons by myself because I have kids. So my husband's home with the kids. If we can't find a sitter, I'm by myself. So that is also why it's really, really important to make friends with whoever is next to you in case not in case. At some point, you're going to have to go to the bathroom. So you need, people, but my checklist, besides the obvious, the books, the book cards, the bookmarks, my display cake pieces and all of that, make sure you have change and make sure you know how much money you're bringing with you when you start. And your credit card reader is charged and your application, everything's already loaded in there. So you can go be real quick. So that's always something I have to make sure everything is charged. I bring snacks with me. I have a cooler. Again, everything I bring with me is intentional. I have a Star Wars cooler because I'm going to come talk to some Star Wars people and get my sci-fi people to the table. But I have lots of water. I have pop to keep my energy up. I bring, just little snacks. I bring little granola bars and things like that to make sure if I can't get away, if I'm too busy and I can't go get something else, I have something I can take little bites of and keep my energy up throughout the day. And comfortable shoes. Like make sure you have comfortable shoes. Don't wear the cute shoes. I've made that mistake. You are on your, especially at cons, you're on your feet. Those run from like 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. sometimes. And 3 or 4 days in a row. And want to be standing, because if you're sitting too much, you're not going to pull people in. So comfortable, wear the comfortable shoes. Your table's going to cover it. It's okay. No one's looking at your feet. So those are some of the big things that I always make sure I have. Water, because I'm going to be talking a lot. And I'm going to need to drink. Snacks, comfortable shoes, and a jacket. I always have a jacket. I dress in layers. Sometimes these places are really warm, and then when you get to a big con, they crank the air conditioning up and you are freezing the whole time. So make sure you dress in layers so that you can be comfortable and you're not thinking about, oh my gosh, I'm so hot, oh my gosh, I'm so cold, and you're missing the sales because of that.
Those are some great tips. Of course, me and Jacob are like, of course, the comfortable shoes. Like, what?
You're not going to wear the high heel boots?
True.
Those heels.
Jacob, does the water skin make your checklist, or what? What's your checklist like? Anything to add?
Elaines, no. Snacks have definitely become a big thing for me too. That's something I figured out just because it's I don't always have somebody with me either, and so being able to ask somebody next to me, like, hey, can I step aside for a few minutes, go grab something to eat, but then like if I get something, like a lot of these cons have big, like, greasy, messy food, and I don't want to get like all over the books and stuff, and so getting to bring some snacks is a really big thing for me. And when I do Comic Cons, I bring a sheet of cosplay bingo with me. That's another way that I draw people in, is like I make a bingo sheet of like whatever I think is going to be like the big like cosplay that year. Like Eddie Munson has been really popular from Stranger Things, like at all the cons lately, and like you'll see like 700 Lokis and a couple different kinds of Jokers, and so like I sit down and I think, and I revise this every con, like what are the big costumes that I think I'm going to see this time, and then that's another way that I'll draw people in, is that if they're not necessarily there to look at books, like maybe they want to play cosplay bingo, and I'll tell them, take this sheet, take a selfie with these folks, bring it back to me, we'll see how many you get, and then usually I'll give them like a candy or something, and then by the time they come back, either we become friends and we can talk about all the cosplay, or every now and then they'll be like, that was fun, let me get your book, we think the same, so that's been fun.
That's so smart. I love that. I'm gonna close with a question of how do you draw people in. I'm stealing that. I'm gonna make mine like, hey, go ahead and take 5 selfies with different Deadpools at this con. MB, like you can either talk about your checklist or tips and advice for attracting people to you while you're at an event.
Yeah, I think Wendy mentioned it too. Candy at your booth.
Yeah.
Candy will bring people in. Also raffles. I mean, if you just have this like cool display of stuff you want to give away, whether it's free books, extra things you have. I did a thing for my books once where I had themed candles for my characters. So I was giving some of those away. And so just cool stuff like that. And, you obviously ask the permission if, hey, do you want to sign up? Hey, do you want to leave your email for newsletters so you can do the marketing thing with the whole thing? People love free stuff, so if you tell them they have a chance to win this cool prize by also having all these free pieces of swag, stickers, pins, candy, that's a great way to pull it in, even if they're just like, oh, can I have that? I'm like, yeah, sure, it's free, go right ahead. People get really shocked when you tell them that things are free. They're like, how much is that little pin that you made? Oh, have it, it's yours, this sticker. Oh no, by all means, please take it, because then you can start a conversation and they're lingering a little bit longer trying to see what else you have, so just again, candy. And it usually brings them in, and then you can like lure them in with the other stuff too. So that's usually what's on my list is something to attract, something to give away, and then again, the free swag is spot on.
All right. Well, I guess your strategy isn't so much let them come to you and draw them in. Your strategy is like meet them at the door and tackle them.
She is the swag.
Literal. All right. I just I just, when they come in, I'm like, hi, welcome to Barnes and Noble or this cute little indie bookstore. Listen, would you like to hear about my book? And you figure they're there to buy books, so obviously, yes. One other thing I want to mention, though, when you have your signings and your readings and everything, be very careful of the time that you do them, because I had one of my very first readings. I had it at like 10 o'clock in the morning, And everybody who came into the bookstore, I'd greet them and I'd say, hi, would you like a book? Oh, no, I'm just here to get the morning paper. Or I'm here to get the Sunday paper in that case. And, it's like, okay, so by the time like maybe 1 or 2 o'clock rolled around, that's when I started getting people in who were actually interested in buying books. So be very careful with that. Seriously.
So early in the morning is just hard for people, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Mhm.
You like to read my book? No, I want a coffee.
Yeah,
Right.
like they already have their coffee and they'd be like, no, I just want a paper, thanks.
Yeah.
Mm.
Holly, how do you bring people? I know you talked about all the different items you have, or you got, I'm sure candy's probably one of them, huh?
I actually haven't done candy yet, so I may have to do that one next. I like to elevate my display table. So, especially when I do big cons or I do craft shows where I'm usually the only author there, so that the novelty factor will get them to come to me. But you have to pull them in. So I have odd looking little table bookshelves that I put all my books on. I put my book stands up, and all my books are standing up. Nothing is laying flat on my table so that you can see it before you get there. I'll have signage up. Everything is elevated so that it's going to catch your eye. And I've seen authors that just lay their books on the table flat. Don't do that. People aren't going to know what they're going to come. They're not going to come over to see it. You want them to see it from across the aisle and down both ways.
Love it. Justine, what do you got to add?
I would also, and this one, it's hard because money, I know, new authors, it's a difficult thing, but if you do have money to spend, put it in design. I put a little more money than I'm comfortable with. I went really nuts getting swag right out of the gate. I've got pretty covers, and all I could think was get pretty things. And I also paid for a really eye-catching website with somebody who was actually talking at Right Hive this year. So AJ Harowitz is amazing. But did design my bookmarks for me, and they stand out. I also got a big stand-up banner. It is huge. It is very pretty. It is going to bring people there. And that was one of the first things that people would talk about. Like, they come over, oh, wow, that's, look at that. Those are all your books. Get something that people will see from down, like Holly was saying, get something to draw people in. I also will always, I have my little clipboard that always has like newsletter sign up, and it's on there around, like surrounded by swag. And I'll always, when people are coming up, I'll be, oh, do you want to sign up for this? You can win a chance at winning a swag bag. And maybe a free book. And like, depending on the honest truth of the thing is, what do I have that I can give away? Because sometimes we don't always have money to like replenish our swag collection and have a bunch of free books on hand. But like, oh, do you want to sign up to win one? I'll announce it in my newsletter next month, whoever won, and I'll email you to make sure they get it. And they'll sign up. I mean, I walked out with way more signatures on my newsletter than I did books that were sold. But at the end of the day, when I send out my announcement about their win, I'm also sending out stuff about my books and keeping myself in mind.
Love it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead,
Okay,
please.
The one thing to add on to the swag and how Justine was saying about the big posters, I got this this idea from author Dahlia Rose. She made a poster with QR codes on it that lead to her. I don't know if anybody else has done that. I just thought it was such a nifty idea. I actually ordered one myself, but she has all the QR codes for all her social media and for her website. So if somebody says, oh, you're on Twitter? Yeah, just take a picture, click QR code, you go right there.
Put QR codes on bookmarks too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
So
yes,
that's
yeah.
actually what I do too. Yep. You, especially if you have books on Amazon. I had a couple of novellas that were Amazon only digital, and I was able to put it on the bookmark and lead them right to the link on Amazon. So it's like, okay, here's this. I don't have it here obviously because it's a digital book, but take this bookmark and it'll bring it to you later. So yeah, QR codes I absolutely love. Same thing with I write digital books a lot, and so I will put it on postcards. I'm like, here's the link to like my Wattpad site or anything other like social media. Here's my link tree, here. So yes, definitely QR codes anytime you can do it for sure.
I literally just made one for Feel and Fire.
I say I have postcards with QR codes for my Audible books too. Since you can't get the the Audible books there, it takes you right to the Audible page. You got a subscription? Here you go. Here's next month's book.
Yeah.
Yep.
So smart. So much. This is awesome. This is seriously like one of the better, like more actionable panels that I've ever like heard. So many like clear pieces of advice, everything from the bard, but the candy, candy's a seriously good idea.
Candies are real, man.
Candy.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. My son's one of those reluctant readers, and he's come to book shows with me and wanted to buy books because the tables had candy on it, and then he started talking to people. So it's a real thing.
I dig it. Definitely giving me ideas. I'm trying to think of like, how can I integrate like QR codes onto like a candy or something?
There you go.
Right?
Some labels with your QR code on a chocolate bar. Okay, this is like a great idea. Actually, we should go with this
down.
Yeah, right.
All right, this has been super fun. I really enjoyed talking with all of you. We got to wrap it up though. So let's start with Holly Ash. Please forgive me for missing you in the very beginning, but let you lead off here at the end so you can tell all the fine folks how they can follow you online, please.
Sure. So I'm going to keep it easy. I am Holly Ash Writer on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok. My website is hollyashwriter.com. The only place you'll find me different, I am Holly Ash 85 on Twitter, and I think that's my name on Right Hive too. So I try to keep it all consistent. That's where you can find me, Holly Ash Writer.
Yeah, see, I'm a pain. All my names are different.
What's Justine, you're next. Let us know at least like maybe the easiest place to find you, if not all of them.
Well, my website's JustineManzano.com, and Twitter and Instagram, which is where I live the most, is Justine_Manzano. I'm also Geektastic Justine here in the Right Hive server. So in case, you want to chat here.
Very nice. MB, where can we find you online?
Yep. So on Twitter and Instagram, I am MB Dalto. My website is authormdalto.com. However, if you want to find me on Wattpad or Discord, it is Druid Rose, which is also my gamer tag.
Nice.
She's difficult too. It's not just me.
Yeah.
Wendy, how can fine folks follow you online?
Okay. Pretty much everywhere I am author W.A. Simpson, except for Instagram, it's author W.A. Simpson 52. My website is authorwasimpson.com. And as also I'm on Discord. It's sometimes I'm W.A. Simpson, but my gamer tag is Runic Nightshade.
See?
Ooh,
You
nice.
got this.
All right. And Jacob, when we're out of earshot of your bard, where can we find you online?
So my website is authorjakedevlin.com, and I'm most active on Facebook and Instagram, where I am Jacob Devlin Creates.
Wonderful. Wonderful. All right. And if you'd like to follow me, you can check me out at youtube.com/@NicholasWFuller or my website, nicholaswfuller.com. I'm working on my own cozy sci-fi adventure novel, among other things. And I also do interviews with authors and other creatives and post that on YouTube. So if you'd like me talking here, you might like that on YouTube too. Thanks again. Thanks to each of you panelists. This has been super fun. Thanks to Right Hive for putting this on, putting it all together, making my job as moderator really easy. And thank you for watching.